My fiance's mother went through my phone at our engagement party, so I made sure she found exactly what I wanted her to see. I'd known Delilah was going to do it. She'd been eyeing my phone all night, the way a cat watches a mouse hole. My fiancé, Brennan, was too busy celebrating with his college friends to notice his mother circling like a shark. It started 3 months earlier when I overheard her on the phone with her sister. "I don't trust her," she said. "She's hiding something." Women like her always are. Women like me, meaning women who didn't come from money, who worked their way through state school, who didn't summer in the Hamptons or winter in Aspen. I'd been nothing but kind to Delilah, laughed at her jokes, complimented her taste, showed up early to family dinners to help cook. None of it mattered. She'd decided I was a gold digger the moment Brennan brought me home. The thing is, I actually loved him. Brennan was kind, funny, and treated me like an equal. But his mother saw dollar signs in my eyes instead of the genuine affection I felt for her son. So when I caught her trying to guess my passcode during Thanksgiving dinner, I knew exactly what to do. I spent 2 weeks creating the perfect trap. First, I changed my lock screen to a photo of Brennan and me. Sweet. Innocent. Then I set my passcode to his birthday. The most obvious choice. I wanted her to get in easily. Next, I filled my phone with carefully curated content. Text threads with my best friend discussing how excited I was about the wedding. Photos of me volunteering at the animal shelter. Research about Brennan's favorite authors so I could buy him thoughtful birthday gifts. But the real masterpiece was the fake conversation. I created a contact under my friend's name and filled it with a staged text exchange. Messages about how I'd overheard Delilah's private conversations, how she'd been embezzling from her own charity foundation, how she'd been having an affair with her husband's business partner for 3 years. Every word was true. I'd spent months gathering evidence, receipts, photos, recorded phone calls. I'd consulted with a lawyer to make sure everything was admissible. But I needed Delilah to discover it herself. I needed her to panic. At the engagement party, I excused myself to the restroom and left my phone on the gift table. I watched from around the corner as Delilah glanced around nervously, then snatched it up. She tried the passcode, got in on the first attempt. Her face went pale as she scrolled through the messages. I timed my return perfectly. Just as she'd finished reading, I appeared beside her. "Find anything interesting?" I asked sweetly. She dropped the phone like it had burned her. Her hand flew to her chest. The phone rang, and I thought, "You thought you'd violate my privacy to find dirt on me?" Brennan appeared at my side, his face confused. "What's going on?" I picked up my phone and pulled up the conversation for him to see. "Your mother went through my phone. She found some information I'd gathered about her." Delilah's eyes widened with panic. "Brennan, darling, this is all a misunderstanding. She's trying to turn you against me." "Mom," Brennan said slowly, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Did you go through her phone? I had to protect you. She's after your money." I opened my banking app and turned it toward them both. "I make $90,000 a year. I have $47,000 in savings and 0 debt. Your son isn't my meal ticket. He's my partner." Then I opened my evidence folder. "But your mother? She's stolen over $200,000 from the Delilah Foundation. She's been funneling money to an account shared with your father's business partner, Terrence." Brennan looked like I'd punched him. Delilah looked like she might vomit. "That's not... How did you... I'm a forensic accountant," I said calmly. "It's literally my job to find financial discrepancies." The room had gone silent. Everyone was staring. Delilah grabbed Brennan's arm. "She's manipulating you. She planted evidence. She's trying to destroy our family." I handed my phone to Brennan. "There's more. Photos, bank statements, recorded conversations, all legally obtained." As Brennan scrolled through months of documentation, his face transformed from confusion to horror to rage. "Mom," he whispered, "tell me this isn't real." Delilah's lawyer's smile finally cracked. "I can explain everything." "You better," said a new voice. We all turned to see Brennan's father standing in the doorway, his face like stone. Brennan's aunt stood beside him, holding her own phone up. "I've been listening on speaker," she said coldly. "The whole board has." The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Brennan's father, Gregory, stepped into the room slowly, each footstep deliberate. He was a man who'd built an empire through careful calculation, and right now he was calculating exactly how much his wife had destroyed. "Everyone out," he said quietly, "except family." The guests moved quickly. Some grabbed their coats without saying goodbye. Others whispered as they filed toward the door. I watched our carefully planned celebration dissolve in real time. "Not you," Gregory said when I started to follow the crowd. "Your family, or you will be." Delilah's face had gone from pale to gray. She sank into the nearest chair, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the armrests. Brennan's aunt, Patricia, walked over and connected her phone to the speaker system. Voices filled the room. Board members I recognized from company events. The CFO, the legal counsel. All of them had heard everything. "Delilah," Patricia said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "We've been concerned about the foundation's finances for 6 months. Donations were down, but expenses kept climbing. You assured us everything was fine." "It was fine," Delilah stammered. "There were legitimate $200,000, Gregory interrupted. "Over 3 years. To an account you share with Terrence." He pulled out his own phone and held it up. Bank statement, transfer records, screenshots that matched exactly what I'd found. "I've had my own investigator looking into this for 2 months, he said, after Patricia noticed irregularities in the quarterly reports. My stomach dropped. I wasn't the only one who'd been digging. Brennan was still scrolling through my phone, his face getting paler with each swipe. He stopped on a photo, Delilah and Terrence at a restaurant, his hand covering hers on the table. The timestamp showed it was taken during a supposed business trip to Boston. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Delilah's eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time, not the calculated kind she used to get her way. "Brennan, please. You have to understand." "How long?" "5 years," she whispered. The number hit like a physical blow. 5 years of lies. 5 years of family dinners where she sat across from Gregory and smiled. 5 years of charity galas where she gave speeches about integrity and community values. Gregory's laugh was hollow. 5 years. While I worked 80-hour weeks to keep this family comfortable, while I trusted you to manage the foundation I built in my mother's name, he turned to me. Show me everything. I pulled up my evidence folder. Months of work laid out in chronological order. Bank transfers, hotel receipts, phone records showing hundreds of calls to Terrence, photos of them together, at restaurants, entering hotels, getting into his car. But the most damning evidence was the recordings. I'd installed a voice-activated recorder in Delilah's home office after overhearing her on the phone that first time. 3 months of conversations. Her and Terrence planning their future together. Her complaining about Gregory's boring personality. Her laughing about how easy it was to manipulate the foundation's books. She thought I was too stupid to notice, I said quietly. That I was just some broke girl dazzled by the money. Patricia was already texting someone, her fingers flying across her screen. The board wants an emergency meeting. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. They'll want documentation, Gregory said. Can you send me copies of everything? I nodded and started forwarding files to his email. Each one felt like a nail in Delilah's coffin. Part of me felt guilty. She was going to be my mother-in-law. But the bigger part remembered every condescending comment, every suspicious glance, every time she'd made me feel like I didn't belong. Brennan finally looked up from my phone. When did you start investigating? The day after Thanksgiving, when I caught her trying to unlock my phone. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? I asked gently. Before you had proof? His silence was answer enough. Delilah had spent years building her image as the perfect mother, the dedicated philanthropist, the devoted wife. My word against hers would have torn us apart. I needed the evidence to speak for itself, I continued. I needed you to see it with your own eyes. Delilah finally found her voice. This is illegal. Recording people without consent is perfectly legal in this state, Patricia interrupted, as long as one party knows about it. And since the recordings were made in your own home, there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. I'd checked with 3 different lawyers before I started, covered every legal angle, made sure nothing could be thrown out or used against me. Gregory was reading through the bank statements, his jaw clenching tighter with each line. The gala last spring, the one where we raised $100,000 for children's heart research. What about it? Delilah asked weakly. You transferred $30,000 to your account the next day, marked it as administrative fees. Those were legitimate. Administrative fees are capped at 8% per our bylaws. You took 30%. He kept scrolling. The summer fundraiser, the winter auction, every single event, you've been skimming from sick children. That detail hit different. The foundation funded pediatric cardiac research and helped families afford life-saving surgeries. Delilah hadn't just stolen from her family. She'd stolen from dying kids. Brennan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I need air. He walked out onto the balcony. I started to follow, but Gregory shook his head. Give him a minute. This is a lot to process. Patricia was still on her phone, coordinating with the board. They want to involve the authorities. This isn't just an internal matter anymore. No, Gregory said. Not yet. Let me talk to our attorneys first. Gregory, she committed fraud. Grand larceny. This has to be reported. I know. His voice cracked slightly. Just give me 24 hours to get our affairs in order. Delilah finally broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. The perfect facade shattered, but I felt no satisfaction watching her cry, just a hollow tiredness. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she choked out. It started with just a few thousand. Terrence was having financial problems and Don't, Gregory said sharply. Don't make excuses. You made choices. Every single transfer was a choice. He turned to me. How did you figure it out? The affair? I saw them together at a coffee shop 6 months ago. Terrence had his arm around her and they were laughing. It seemed too familiar for business partners. I pulled out my phone and showed him the first photo I'd taken that day. Grainy, taken from across the street, but clear enough to see Delilah leaning into Terrence with her eyes closed. I followed them twice after that. Once to a hotel. Once to a house in the suburbs. His vacation rental. Jesus, Gregory muttered. You're thorough. I had to be. She'd already decided I was the enemy. If I was wrong, she'd have used it to drive Brennan and me apart. Patricia looked at me with something like respect. You could have just walked away, found some nice guy without complicated family drama. I love Brennan, I said simply. He deserves to know the truth about his mother. And those kids your foundation helps, they deserve better than a thief. Brennan came back inside, his face red from crying. I want to talk to her alone. Gregory shook his head. Son, alone, Brennan repeated firmly. Everyone else out. Now. We filed out slowly. Patricia squeezed my hand as we walked into the hallway. Gregory looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. We stood in the corridor, listening to muffled voices through the door. Brennan's rising in anger. Delilah's desperate pleading. The sound of something breaking. Maybe a glass, maybe a vase. He loved her so much, Gregory said quietly. She was everything to him. This is going to destroy him. Not forever, I said. He's stronger than you think. How do you know? Because he chose to look at the evidence instead of choosing blind loyalty. That takes strength. Patricia's phone buzzed. The board's attorney. They're filing an official complaint with the state attorney general tomorrow morning, unless we can provide a compelling reason not to. Like what? Gregory asked bitterly. My wife's a thief and a liar. There's no good reason to protect her. There might be a way to handle this that doesn't result in criminal charges, Patricia said carefully. If she agrees to pay back every penny, resign from the board, and sign away any claim to marital assets. No, I interrupted. She needs to face real consequences. They both looked at me. Those families who donated money thought they were helping sick children. Delilah betrayed their trust. If we sweep this under the rug, what message does that send? The message, Patricia said slowly, is that we protect our own, even when they're wrong, especially then. I shook my head. I can't be part of a family that values reputation over integrity. Then maybe you shouldn't marry into this family, Patricia said sharply. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Gregory put a hand on his sister's arm. Patricia, that's enough. Is it? She comes into our lives, tears apart our family, and now she's giving us ultimatums about justice? I didn't tear anything apart, I said calmly. Delilah did that herself. I just turned on the light so everyone could see. The door opened. Brennan stood there, his eyes red and swollen. She admitted everything. The affair, the money, all of it. What do you want to do? Gregory asked. I want to go home, with my fiancé. He took my hand and led me toward the elevator. Behind us, I heard Patricia say something sharp, but Brennan didn't slow down. In the car, neither of us spoke. The streets blurred past the windows. When we finally got to his apartment, our apartment, I kept reminding myself, he went straight to the bedroom and closed the door. I sat on the couch in the dark, wondering if I'd just destroyed the man I loved in order to save him. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. The board meeting is at 9 a.m. We need you there to present your findings. Then one from Gregory. Thank you for telling the truth. Brennan will understand eventually. And finally, one from an unknown number. This isn't over. You'll regret what you did to my family. Delilah. I screenshot the text and forwarded it to Gregory and Patricia. Threats wouldn't help her case. Around 2 a.m., the bedroom door opened. Brennan stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light. Come to bed, he said quietly. I followed him, and we lay in the darkness without touching. Do you hate me? I finally asked. No, I hate that you were right. I'm sorry. Don't be. If you hadn't found out, I would have married into her lies. Built my whole life on them. He rolled over to face me. The worst part? I'm not even surprised. There were so many signs. Late-night phone calls she'd taken her office, unexplained absences, the way she'd flinch when my dad mentioned Terrence's name. You couldn't have known. I should have. I just didn't want to see it. We fell asleep holding hands, but I kept waking up, checking my phone for more threats from Delilah. Morning came too quickly. The board meeting was in 3 hours, and I still hadn't decided what to wear. Professional? Apologetic? Defiant? I settled on a simple black dress with a cardigan. Conservative, respectful, not trying to make a statement. Brennan got dressed in silence, his movements mechanical. He'd barely eaten breakfast, just pushed his eggs around his plate. You don't have to come, I said. This is going to be brutal. She's my mother. I need to be there. The foundation's office was in a glass tower downtown. We rode the elevator to the 14th floor in tense silence. Gregory was already in the conference room, flanked by 2 lawyers. Patricia sat across from them, her face grim. And at the far end of the table sat Delilah, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. The board members filed in. 12 people who trusted Delilah to manage millions in donations. Their faces ranged from confused to furious. The chairman, an older man named Richard, called the meeting to order. We're here to address serious allegations of financial misconduct against board member Delilah Morrison. Ms. Morrison has been presented with evidence of embezzlement and misappropriation of charitable funds. We've asked her legal counsel to join us. A slick-looking lawyer sat down next to Delilah. He immediately started talking about presumption of innocence and the need for due process. Richard cut him off. This isn't a criminal trial. This is an internal review. We have documentation of unauthorized transfers totaling over $200,000. Ms. Morrison has admitted to these transfers. We're here to determine next steps. He turned to me. Ms. Chen, you're the one who compiled this evidence. Walk us through what you found. I stood up, my legs shaking slightly. I'd presented to rooms full of auditors before, but never with the future of my relationship hanging in the balance. 6 months ago, I noticed inconsistencies in the foundation's quarterly reports. Lie number 1. I'd noticed Delilah's affair 6 months ago, but I hadn't looked at the foundation's books until after Thanksgiving. I started reviewing historical financial data and found a pattern of unauthorized transfers occurring after major fundraising events. I pulled up a spreadsheet on the conference room screen, highlighting the transfers in red. Each transfer was coded as an administrative expense, but they exceeded the 8% cap established in the foundation's bylaws. Over 3 years, these transfers totaled $203,472. Murmurs around the table. One board member, a woman named Helen, raised her hand. Where was this money going? To a joint account held by Ms. Morrison and Terrence Clayton, Mr. Morrison's business partner. Gregory flinched at the mention of Terrence's name. Delilah stared at the table, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. I have bank statements showing the account activity as well as documentation of significant purchases made from this account. A luxury vacation to Bali, a Mercedes, a down payment on a vacation property in Vermont. That property was a business investment. Delilah's lawyer interjected. Then why is it titled in Delilah Morrison and Terrence Clayton's names only, not the business? Not as joint tenants with Mr. Morrison, just the two of them. Silent. Richard cleared his throat. Ms. Morrison, do you have anything to say? Delilah finally looked up, her eyes pleading. I made mistakes. I allowed personal feelings to cloud my judgment, but I never intended to hurt anyone. The foundation will be repaid in full. With what money? Patricia asked sharply. Your accounts are frozen pending investigation. I'll sell the property in Vermont. Liquidate assets. Whatever it takes. That's not enough, Helen said. You betrayed the trust of every family we've helped. Every donor who believed their money was going toward life-saving research. Another board member, a doctor named William, stood up. I recommended this foundation to my patients' families, told them it was legitimate, that their donations would make a real difference. How do I face them now? You tell them the truth, I said. That one person made terrible choices. But the foundation's mission is still sound, that you've taken steps to ensure it never happens again. William looked at me with surprise. You're defending us? I'm defending the children who need this foundation. Delilah's actions don't erase the good work everyone else has done. Richard nodded slowly. Agreed. But we still need to address the immediate crisis. Ms. Morrison, your lawyer mentioned repayment. Do you have a specific proposal? Delilah's lawyer slid a document across the table. My client is willing to resign from the board immediately, surrender all claim to foundation assets, and enter into a repayment agreement over 5 years. 5 years? Patricia laughed bitterly. By which time the statute of limitations will have run out on criminal charges? We're trying to resolve this privately, because you know a criminal conviction would destroy any chance of her maintaining her social standing, Gregory said flatly. This isn't about making things right. It's about protecting her reputation. What do you want? Delilah asked, looking directly at her husband for the first time. Prison? Public humiliation? Will that make you feel better? No, Gregory said quietly. Nothing will make me feel better. But maybe it'll make those families you stole from feel like justice was served. Brennan had been silent throughout the meeting, but now he spoke. I want to know why. Why Terrence? Why the money? Why throw away everything? Delilah's composure cracked again. Because I was lonely. Your father worked constantly. You were away at college. The house felt empty, and Terrence paid attention to me. So you stole from sick children because you were lonely? I wasn't thinking clearly. The affair clouded my judgment. Stop, Brennan said, his voice rising. Stop making excuses. You knew exactly what you were doing. Every transfer. Every lie. Every time you looked me in the eye and pretended to be someone you weren't. He turned to the board. I vote we turn this over to the authorities. Let them decide what happens. Brennan, please. Delilah reached for him, but he stepped back. You don't get to ask me for mercy. Not after this. Richard looked around the table. We need a formal vote. All in favor of referring this matter to law enforcement? 10 hands went up immediately. 2 abstained. Board members who'd been friends with Delilah for years. None voted against. It's decided. I'll contact the district attorney's office this afternoon. Delilah stood abruptly, her chair falling backward. You're all making a mistake. When this becomes public, the foundation's reputation will be destroyed. Donations will dry up. You'll hurt the very people you claim to want to help. We'll weather it, Helen said firmly. Organizations recover from scandals when they handle them with transparency and accountability. It's the cover-ups that kill foundations. Speaking of transparency, I said, I think we should issue a public statement before the criminal charges become public. Control the narrative. Richard looked at me with interest. What kind of statement? Something honest. Acknowledging the breach, explaining the steps we're taking to make victims whole, and committing to stronger financial oversight going forward. You keep saying we, Patricia noted. You're not part of this organization. Not yet, I agreed. But I could be. I'm a forensic accountant. This is literally what I do. Help organizations rebuild after financial crises. The room went quiet as board members exchanged glances. Are you proposing to join the board? Richard asked. I'm proposing to help you survive this. Pro bono, at least initially. Once the foundation is stable, we can discuss compensation. Gregory was staring at me with an unreadable expression. Why would you do that? After everything with Delilah, why would you want anything to do with this family? Because Brennan's family. And because those kids still need help, regardless of what his mother did. Richard nodded slowly. We'll take it under advisement. Right now, we need to adjourn this meeting and let Ms. Morrison consult with her attorney about the criminal referral. As people gathered their things, Delilah approached me. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but she shook him off. You planned this, she hissed. From the beginning, you wanted to destroy me. No, I said calmly. I wanted to marry your son. You made yourself the obstacle. You'll never be part of this family. Even if Brennan stays with you, and I doubt he will, everyone will remember you as the girl who sent his mother to prison. Maybe. Or maybe they'll remember me as the person who saved the foundation from collapsing completely. Brennan appeared at my side. We're done here, Mom. Don't contact me. Don't contact her. We'll communicate through lawyers from now on. Brennan, you can't mean... I do. You chose Terrence over this family. You chose money over integrity. I'm choosing her. He took my hand and led me out of the conference room. In the elevator, I finally let myself breathe. Are you sure about this? I asked. She's still your mother. A mother who stole from children and cheated on my father for 5 years. I don't know who that person is, but she's not the woman I thought I knew. We drove to a coffee shop and sat in silence for a long time, watching people go about their normal days. A couple arguing over parking. A teenager laughing at something on their phone. Life continuing around us while ours imploded. What now? Brennan finally asked. Now we decide if we still want to get married. If this is too much... Stop, he interrupted. I'm not leaving you because my mother turned out to be a criminal. If anything, you saved me from building my whole life on her lies. But your family will adjust. Patricia's angry right now, but she'll come around. My dad already respects you. And my mom? She made her own choices. He reached across the table and took my hand. I love you. Not despite this mess, but because of how you handled it. You could have just warned me off and walked away. Instead, you did the hard thing. The right thing. The right thing feels terrible. Yeah, it usually does. We spent the next few days in a strange limbo. The board formally voted to hire me as a consultant. Gregory filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Patricia stopped returning my calls. And the district attorney opened a criminal investigation into Delilah's conduct. The media picked up the story 3 days after the board meeting. Prominent philanthropist accused of embezzlement, screamed the headline. Within hours, every major outlet had covered it. Photos of Delilah at charity galas, smiling in designer gowns, juxtaposed with photos of the sick children she'd stolen from. Public opinion was swift and brutal. Death threats flooded her social media before she deleted all her accounts. Her country club revoked her membership. Friends stopped taking her calls. Terrence was arrested trying to flee to Canada. He'd withdrawn $50,000 from the joint account and bought a one-way ticket. Police found him at the border with fake identification and a duffel bag full of cash. His arrest made everything worse for Delilah. Prosecutors charged them both with conspiracy to commit fraud, arguing they'd planned the scheme together. Terrence's lawyer immediately started talking about a plea deal in exchange for testimony against Delilah. Brennan and I watched it all unfold from the safety of his apartment, which had become our bunker. Reporters camped outside the building for a week before security kicked them out. My phone rang constantly with interview requests. Someone leaked my name as the whistleblower, and suddenly, I was part of the story. Forensic accountant exposes future mother-in-law's crimes, read one particularly sensational headline. They used my LinkedIn photo, making me look stern and vindictive. I got hate mail from people who thought I should have handled it privately. I got thank you cards from families whose children had benefited from the foundation. I got marriage proposals from men I'd never met who were impressed by my detective work. The whole thing was surreal. 4 weeks after the engagement party, Delilah was formally indicted on 12 counts of wire fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. Her bail was set at $500,000. Gregory refused to pay it. She spent 2 nights in jail before her sister finally posted bond. The trial was set for 6 months out. Delilah's lawyer tried every delay tactic imaginable, but the judge wasn't interested. The evidence was too strong, too comprehensive. My documentation of her crimes had made prosecution straightforward. In the meantime, I threw myself into rebuilding the foundation. We hired a new executive director, a former FBI agent with experience in financial crimes. We implemented new oversight procedures requiring dual signatures on all transactions over $1,000. We brought in an independent auditing firm to review all historical records. And we launched a transparency initiative, publishing our financials online every quarter. Donors could see exactly where their money went, down to the dollar. Donations initially dropped by 40% after the scandal broke. People were understandably wary. But slowly, as word spread about the reforms we'd implemented, contributions started climbing again. We were honest about what happened. We owned the failure. And people respected that. 6 months flew by in a blur of work and wedding planning. We'd postponed the original date. Getting married while Delilah was on trial felt wrong, but we started planning for a small ceremony after everything was resolved. Patricia finally called me 3 months into the ordeal. "I owe you an apology," she said without preamble. "I was wrong. You didn't destroy this family. You saved it from imploding later. Thank you for saying that. The board wants to make your consultant position permanent, with a real salary and benefits. You've done more in 3 months than most executive directors do in years. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. Richard's ready to make the offer official." I accepted a week later, becoming the foundation's director of financial oversight. It meant working alongside Gregory, who'd stayed on the board despite everything. We developed an easy professional relationship, bonding over spreadsheets and compliance requirements. He never talked about Delilah unless I brought her up. The divorce was proceeding quietly, with lawyers handling everything. He'd moved into a hotel while the house was being appraised and divided. "I thought I knew her," he told me once over coffee. 32 years of marriage, and I didn't know her at all. "You knew the part she showed you. That's all anyone can do. Is that enough? For a marriage? I don't know. I'll let you know after I've been married for 32 years. He smiled at that. The first real smile I'd seen from him in months. The trial started on a cold Monday in February. Brennan and I sat in the back row of the courtroom, watching as Delilah entered in handcuffs. She'd lost weight, her face gaunt and pale. Her expensive clothes hung off her frame. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They walked the jury through every transfer, every lie, every moment of betrayal. They called character witnesses, families whose children had needed surgery, who donated their savings to the foundation believing it would help. One mother testified about her daughter's heart transplant, how they'd organized fundraisers in their small town to contribute to the foundation. How betrayed she felt, learning that money might have funded Delilah's vacation instead. Delilah's lawyer tried to paint her as a woman suffering from mental illness, depression that clouded her judgment. They brought in a psychiatrist who testified about her anxiety medication, her history of therapy, but it rang hollow against the mountain of evidence. Terrence testified against her in exchange for a reduced sentence. He admitted the affair, the financial scheme, everything. He claimed Delilah had initiated it all, that he'd just gone along to make her happy. Delilah's face remained impassive throughout his testimony, but I saw her hands clenching in her lap. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Delilah didn't react when the verdict was read. She just stood there, staring straight ahead while her lawyer frantically whispered in her ear. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. The prosecution was asking for the maximum, 15 years. Her lawyer was arguing for probation and restitution. We didn't attend the sentencing hearing. Brennan couldn't bring himself to watch his mother be sent to prison. We learned the outcome from a text from Gregory. 8 years. Eligible for parole after 5? Is that justice? Brennan asked, staring at the message. I don't know. Is any punishment enough? She's 63. She'll be 71 when she gets out, if she even lives that long. She'll live, I said. People like her always do. We got married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the Botanical Gardens. Gregory walked me down the aisle. Patricia was my maid of honor. Brennan's college friends filled the seats, along with some board members and a few of my coworkers. No one mentioned Delilah, though her absence echoed through every moment. During our vows, Brennan said, "I promise to always be honest with you, even when the truth is hard, especially then. And I promised to always trust my instincts and to always choose what's right over what's easy." The reception was small and intimate. People gave speeches about second chances and choosing your own family. Helen from the board told stories about the children we'd helped, the families whose lives had been saved by the foundation's work. Delilah tried to destroy something beautiful, she said, but instead she made it stronger. Because of one person's courage to speak up, this foundation will help thousands of children in the years to come. Everyone looked at me when she said it, and I felt my face flush. "I just turned on the lights," I said when people clapped. "You all did the real work of rebuilding." But I knew that wasn't entirely true. Without my investigation, the embezzlement would have continued. The foundation would have collapsed eventually. And all those families depending on us would have had nowhere to turn. Gregory pulled me aside during dinner. I heard from Delilah's lawyer. She wants to see Brennan. What did you tell him? That it's his decision. But I wanted to warn you first. Brennan had been adamant about cutting contact completely. He'd returned her letters unopened, refused calls from the prison, told her lawyer in no uncertain terms that he had nothing to say to her. Do you think he should go? I asked Gregory. I think he'll regret it if he doesn't, even if it's just to say goodbye to who she used to be. That night, lying in our hotel room, I told Brennan about his mother's request. No, he said immediately. I'm done with her. Okay, you think I should go? I think you should do whatever feels right for you. No judgment, either way. He was quiet for a long time. What would you do if it was your mother? I thought about my own mom, who'd worked 2 jobs to put me through college, who'd taught me that integrity mattered more than money, who would never have stolen from anyone, let alone sick children. I honestly don't know. My mother would never do what Delilah did. But if she had, then I guess I'd want answers. Not excuses. Just an explanation of how someone I loved could do something so horrible. 3 weeks later, Brennan drove to the Women's Correctional Facility 2 hours north. I offered to go with him, but he wanted to do it alone. He came home 6 hours later, his eyes red and swollen. She apologized, he said. Actually apologized, without excuses or justifications. How do you feel? Like I said goodbye to someone who died a long time ago. The person in that room looked like my mom, but she wasn't. Not really. Did it help? Seeing her? Yeah, I think it did. He pulled me close and we stood in the kitchen holding each other while the sun set outside our window. Life slowly returned to normal, or at least a new version of normal. I continued working for the foundation, growing it beyond what it had been before the scandal. We launched new programs, expanded our reach, helped more families than ever before. Brennan returned to his work as a civil engineer, designing sustainable housing projects. We bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood, far from the drama of his family's world. Gregory became a regular presence in our lives, stopping by for dinner once a week. He'd aged since the scandal, his hair going gray seemingly overnight, but he seemed lighter somehow, unburdened by the weight of a failing marriage. Patricia and I developed a friendship based on mutual respect and shared work on the board. She never fully apologized for her initial hostility, but she didn't need to. Her actions spoke louder. A year after the trial, we received an unexpected letter. It was from one of the mothers who testified, the woman whose daughter had received a heart transplant. Dear Mrs. Morrison, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. Your mother-in-law's actions deeply hurt my family, but I wanted you to know that because of your courage, my daughter is alive today. After the scandal, donations to the foundation increased dramatically. The research you're funding led to a breakthrough in pediatric cardiac surgery. My daughter was one of the first children to benefit from this new technique. She just started kindergarten. She runs and plays like any other 5-year-old. None of that would have been possible without the foundation, and without you speaking up. Thank you for doing the hard thing. I kept that letter in my desk drawer. On hard days, when I questioned whether destroying Brennan's family had been worth it, I'd read it again. Delilah was denied parole after 3 years. Her lawyer argued she'd been a model prisoner, taking classes and counseling sessions. But the parole board wasn't convinced she'd truly understood the scope of her crimes. Inmate Morrison continues to minimize her actions, the board's report stated. She expresses regret at being caught but shows limited remorse for the harm caused to victims. Brennan didn't react when we got the news. He'd moved beyond anger into a kind of peaceful indifference. His mother had become someone he used to know, a character in a story about someone else's life. 5 years after the engagement party that changed everything, I stood in front of the board to present our annual report. The foundation had grown by 300%. We'd funded groundbreaking research that was saving lives across the country. We'd helped over 2,000 families afford life-saving surgeries. None of this would have been possible, Richard said during the meeting, without someone having the courage to say something when they saw something wrong. After the meeting, a young woman approached me. She was maybe 16, with scars visible on her chest from multiple surgeries. Are you the whistleblower? She asked. I nodded, still uncomfortable with that label. I just wanted to say thank you. My family got help from the foundation when I was 8. The money you recovered, the money she stole, it helped pay for my surgery. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of a gap-toothed little girl in a hospital bed, giving a thumbs up. That's me, 5 years ago. I almost died because my family couldn't afford the operation, but you made sure the money was there. We stood in the hallway of the office building, this teenage girl and I, while she told me about her life, how she wanted to be a doctor now, how she volunteered at children's hospitals, reading to sick kids, how she was living the life she almost didn't get to have. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Turning her in? Every day, I admitted. It destroyed my fiancé's family, made things complicated in ways I never imagined. But you'd do it again? I looked at this vibrant, healthy teenager in front of me, thought about the thousands of other children whose lives had been saved or improved because the foundation survived. Yeah, I said, I'd do it again. That night, Brennan and I sat on our back porch, watching fireflies dance in the yard. It was the kind of peaceful evening Delilah would have never appreciated. Too simple, too ordinary. Your mom's parole hearing is coming up again, I said, in 3 months. I know. Are you going to write a letter? The parole board asked if family members wanted to submit statements. He was quiet for a long time. No, what she did, who she became, that's between her and the system now. I can't keep reliving it every few years. That's fair. Do you think she'll ever really understand what she did wrong? I thought about Delilah's face in the courtroom, the way she looked at me with pure hatred when the verdict was read. Probably not. Some people are incapable of seeing beyond their own needs. That's sad. Yeah, it really is. We sat in silence as darkness fell. 2 people who'd survived a catastrophe and somehow built something better from the ruins. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Gregory. I'm getting remarried, he said without preamble. Congratulations. Who's the lucky woman? Her name is Ruth. She's a children's librarian. We met at a foundation event 3 months ago. Fast. At my age, you don't waste time. Life's too short to be alone. Does Brennan know? I wanted to tell you first. Make sure you'd both be okay with it. We're happy for you. You deserve this. After I hung up, I thought about Gregory, who'd lost his wife, his business partner, and his faith in people all in one terrible day. And somehow, he'd found his way back to hope. That was what survival looked like. Not forgetting what happened, but refusing to let it define your entire future. Delilah was released after serving 7 years of her 8-year sentence. We learned about it from a brief mention in the local paper. Former philanthropist released from prison. No fanfare. No media circus. Just a brief notice that she'd been transferred to a halfway house in a neighboring state. Brennan's phone rang that night. An unknown number. He looked at it, then at me. What do you think? I think it's your decision. He let it go to voicemail. The message was brief. Delilah's voice, older and rougher than I remembered. Brennan, it's your mother. I know I have no right to call, but I wanted you to know I'm out. I'm in a halfway house in Ohio. I'm working with a therapist, trying to understand what I did and why. Pause. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I'm sorry. For everything. For the lies. The theft. For destroying your trust in me. Another pause. I love you. I always have. Even when I didn't show it. I hope someday you can believe that. The message ended. Brennan played it 3 more times. His face unreadable. What are you thinking? I asked. That she sounds different. Smaller somehow. Does that change anything? I don't know. Part of me wants to respond. Part of me thinks it's too late. It's not about it being too late. It's about what you need. He deleted the message but saved the number. I'm not ready yet. Maybe someday. Okay. 3 months later, we celebrated the foundation's 10th anniversary since the scandal. The event was held in a hotel ballroom, packed with donors, board members, and families who'd been helped over the years. Helen gave a speech about resilience and redemption. Not Delilah's redemption, but the organization's. 10 years ago, we faced an existential crisis. One person's greed threatened to destroy decades of good work. But instead of collapsing, we became stronger. We became more transparent, more accountable, more committed to our mission. She gestured to me. One person's courage to speak up saved this organization. And in doing so, saved countless lives. The applause was overwhelming. I stood and waved awkwardly, never comfortable being the center of attention. After the speeches, a reporter from the local paper approached me. Can I ask you a few questions? For a follow-up piece on the anniversary? Sure. Do you have any regrets about exposing Delilah Morrison? Every day. But not about the act itself. About the fact that it was necessary. Have you spoken to her since her release? No. And I don't plan to. Do you think she's truly reformed? I think prison changes people. Whether it makes them better or just more careful is hard to say. What would you say to other people who suspect financial wrongdoing in organizations they're part of? Speak up. Document everything. Trust your instincts. And understand that doing the right thing doesn't always feel good. The article ran a week later with the headline, Whistleblower Reflects on Decade of Reform. It included an interview with Gregory and Ruth, who'd been married for 2 years now. They'd had a small ceremony, nothing like the elaborate affair Gregory and Delilah had thrown for their anniversary just before the scandal broke. My first marriage was built on appearances, Gregory said in the article. This one is built on honesty. That's the difference. Patricia was quoted too, talking about how the scandal had taught the board valuable lessons about oversight and accountability. We assumed good intentions, she said. Now we verify everything. Trust, but verify. That's our motto now. The article mentioned Delilah only briefly, noting she'd been released and was living quietly in Ohio, working as a bookkeeper for a small nonprofit. The irony of that wasn't lost on anyone. 2 years after her release, Brennan finally responded to one of his mother's periodic messages. Not a call, just a text. I don't know if we'll ever have a real relationship again, but I'm willing to try supervised conversations, if you're interested. The response came within minutes. Yes, please, anytime you're ready. They met at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our city and her halfway house. I waited in the car while they talked for 2 hours. When Brennan came out, his face was wet with tears. She's different, he said. Broken maybe, but different. Good different? I don't know yet. But she listened. Actually listened, without making excuses. How do you feel? Like maybe, eventually, I can forgive her. Not forget. Never forget. But forgive. They started meeting once a month. Slowly. Carefully. Rebuilding something that resembled a relationship. Not the unconditional love of his childhood, but something more honest. Delilah never asked to meet me. She sent a letter once, apologizing for the threats and the hate. I read it, acknowledged it, and filed it away with all the other documentation of that terrible time. Some wounds heal, some just scar over, and some never fully close. The foundation continues to thrive. We're funding research that's pushing the boundaries of what's possible in pediatric cardiac care. We've helped over 10,000 families. We've become a model for other organizations trying to rebuild after financial scandals, and I'm still here, checking every transaction, questioning every expense, making sure history doesn't repeat itself. People sometimes ask if I'm cynical now, if seeing what Delilah did made me lose faith in humanity. The opposite happened. I saw Gregory rebuild his life with grace and dignity. I saw Patricia set aside her pride to do what was right. I saw Brennan choose truth over comfortable lies. I saw board members work tirelessly to restore the foundation's reputation. I saw dozens of families pull together to donate after the scandal, explicitly because they wanted to prove that one person's crimes wouldn't destroy something good. I saw the teenage girl with surgical scars tell me she wanted to be a doctor, to help other kids like her. Delilah showed me what happens when you prioritize yourself above everything else. But everyone else showed me what happens when you choose integrity, even when it's hard. That's the real lesson from all of this. Not that people are terrible, but that when they are, there are always others willing to step up and do the work of repair. 10 years after that engagement party, Brennan and I renewed our vows. Same botanical gardens, same small group of friends and family. But this time, it felt different. The first time, we'd been promising to face an unknown future together. This time, we knew exactly what we'd survived and chosen each other anyway. Gregory and Ruth were there, holding hands like newlyweds. Patricia brought her new partner, a woman she'd been seeing for a year. Board members and foundation families filled the seats. And in the back row, barely visible, sat Delilah. Brennan had invited her, not to walk him down the aisle or give a speech, just to witness that he'd built a life beyond her mistakes. She left immediately after the ceremony, slipping out before the reception. But she'd been there, and that was enough. During the reception, a little boy approached me, maybe 4 years old with a scar peeking out from his shirt collar. "Are you the lady who helps sick kids?" he asked. "I try to," I said, kneeling down to his level. "Thank you," he said solemnly. "The doctors fixed my heart because of you." His mother appeared, apologizing for the interruption, but I was glad he'd spoken up, because that's what it was all for. Not revenge against Delilah, not vindication for being right, but this, a healthy child who got to grow up because someone chose to speak the truth. Later that night, Brennan and I stood on the same back porch where we'd spent countless evenings processing the aftermath of the scandal. "Do you think she'll stay clean?" he asked. "My mom? I think she'll try. Whether she succeeds is up to her. I hope she does. For her sake, not mine. That's growth." Is it weird that I feel sorry for her? No. She lost everything. Her marriage, her reputation, her freedom, nearly her relationship with you. That's a heavy price to pay. She earned it. Doesn't mean it's not sad. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of slowly healing from wounds that should have torn us apart. "I'm glad you were nosy," Brennan said suddenly. "Excuse me? That day you followed her to the coffee shop. If you'd minded your own business, I'd be married to a woman I could never really trust, because I'd always wonder what my mom was hiding." I wasn't being nosy. I was being thorough. He laughed and pulled me close. "You were being both, and I love you for it." The foundation's 15th anniversary fell on a Tuesday. We'd planned a major gala to celebrate. Black tie, silent auction, the works. Tickets were $500 a plate, with all proceeds going directly to research. The ballroom was packed. Donors and board members mingled with families who'd been helped. Surgeons who'd used our funded research to save lives. Politicians who'd supported our work. Media covering the feel-good story of an organization that had survived scandal and emerged stronger. I stood at the podium to give the keynote speech, looking out at hundreds of faces. 15 years ago, this organization faced its darkest moment. One person's choices threatened to destroy decades of work and betray the trust of thousands of families. But here's what that person didn't understand. Good work survives bad actors. When an organization's mission is strong and its people are committed, no individual can destroy it. We didn't just survive the scandal. We used it as a catalyst for transformation. We implemented oversight procedures that became models for other nonprofits. We committed to radical transparency. We proved that accountability and compassion can coexist. Today, we've helped over 15,000 families. Our funded research has led to breakthrough treatments that are saving lives around the world. We've trained other organizations in financial oversight and crisis management. None of this erases what happened, but it proves that one person's worst actions don't have to define an entire organization's legacy. The applause was deafening, but more importantly, I saw tears on the faces of parents whose children were alive because of this work. That was the real victory. After the speeches, Gregory pulled me aside. "I want to establish an endowment in your name, the Morrison Integrity Fund, to support organizations recovering from financial scandals." "You don't have to do that. I know, but I want to. You saved my family's legacy. Let me honor that." The fund was established 6 months later with an initial donation of $5 million. Other donors added to it, moved by the story of redemption and reform. The irony of a fund named after the Morrison family helping organizations recover from embezzlement wasn't lost on anyone. But that was the point, showing that families could choose to build something good from the ashes of scandal. Delilah sent a letter when she heard about the fund. "I don't deserve to have my name associated with something good, but I'm grateful that you're turning my worst mistakes into something that helps others. I'll never forgive myself for what I did, but maybe someday I can find peace, knowing that at least some good came from all the pain I caused. Thank you for giving my family a path forward when I tried to burn all the bridges." I showed the letter to Brennan. "She's trying," he said. "I'll give her that." Is trying enough? For me? I don't know, but it's something. 20 years after the engagement party that changed everything, I retired from active work at the foundation. Not because I was done fighting for the mission, but because new leadership was ready to take over. A young woman named Chen, no relation, became the new director of financial oversight. She was brilliant, thorough, and committed to the same principles of transparency that had guided us through the crisis. "You're my role model," she told me on her first day. "I wrote my master's thesis about how this organization recovered from scandal. Then you know it wasn't me alone. It was hundreds of people choosing integrity over convenience. But you started it. You could have walked away. Instead, you stayed and fought." I thought about that often in retirement. How many times I'd wanted to walk away. How much easier it would have been to just break up with Brennan and avoid the whole mess. But I hadn't. And that choice, to stay and fight for what was right, had rippled out in ways I never could have imagined. The foundation was thriving. Families were being helped. Research was saving lives. Other organizations were learning from our experience. All because I trusted my instincts and refused to be intimidated. Brennan retired from engineering around the same time. We bought a small cabin in the mountains and spent our days hiking, reading, and enjoying the peace we'd fought so hard to build. Delilah passed away 2 years into our retirement. Heart failure, sudden and unexpected. She was 78. Brennan got the call from a nurse at her assisted living facility. She'd been living there for 3 years, working part-time at a local food bank and attending therapy twice a week. She left something for you, the nurse said. Asked me to send it after she died. The package arrived a week later. Inside was a worn leather journal and a letter. Dear Brennan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Good. I've spent the last 20 years trying to make amends and I'm exhausted. The journal contains everything I should have told you when you were growing up. Stories about your grandparents. Advice I wish I'd given. Apologies for all the ways I failed you. I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed your trust in ways that can never be fully repaired. I know I stole from children who needed help, and that's a stain on my soul I'll carry forever. But I want you to know something. Watching you build a life with integrity, watching you choose honesty even when it was hard, watching you become the man I should have been, that's been my redemption. You're everything I wasn't, and I'm proud of you. Love. Mom. Brennan read the letter 3 times, then set it aside. Do you want to read the journal? I asked. Not yet, maybe someday. We held a small memorial service for Delilah. Just immediate family and a few people from her last years who'd known the person she'd become after prison. The priest talked about redemption and second chances, about how people could change, even if they couldn't undo their past mistakes. After the service, a woman approached us, someone I didn't recognize. I worked with Delilah at the food bank, she said. I wanted you to know she was different in her last years. Humble, hardworking. She never talked about her past, but when someone finally told me who she was, I couldn't believe it. Why not? Brennan asked. Because the woman I knew would give someone her last dollar if they needed it. She spent hours with homeless families, helping them fill out paperwork, navigate the system. She was kind. Brennan's eyes filled with tears. Thank you for telling me that. After everyone left, we stood by her grave, a simple headstone with just her name and dates. Do you think she really changed? I asked. I think she tried. And in the end, maybe that's all any of us can do. We drove home in silence, processing the end of a story that had defined so much of our lives. That night, Brennan opened the journal and started reading. I sat beside him, watching decades of complicated feelings play across his face. Some of it was mundane, recipes from his grandmother, stories about his childhood, observations about family dynamics. But some of it was raw, admissions of mistakes, explanations of choices, expressions of regret. One entry, dated 6 months before her death, stood out. I'm dying. The doctors say I have maybe a year left, and I find myself thinking about that engagement party 23 years ago. The night my whole carefully constructed life fell apart. For years I blamed her, Brennan's wife, the woman who exposed me. I told myself she was vindictive, jealous, manipulative, but the truth is simpler and harder. She did what I should have done. She chose integrity over comfort. She chose truth over lies. She chose what was right, even when it cost her. I wish I'd been that brave. I wish I'd admitted my mistakes before they destroyed everything. I wish I'd been honest with Gregory, with Brennan, with myself, but I wasn't. And I'll die knowing that the best thing I ever did was give birth to a son who learned to be better than me. Brennan closed the journal and sat in silence for a long time. She understood, he finally said. At the end, she understood. Does that change anything? It doesn't fix what she did, but it means she died knowing the truth, and maybe that's enough. We never told the story of the journal publicly. It felt like something that should stay private, the final chapter in a very public scandal. But privately, Brennan found peace with it. His mother had done terrible things, faced consequences, and spent her last years trying to be better, not trying to undo her mistakes. That was impossible, but trying to live differently. That was all anyone could ask. Years passed. The foundation continued to thrive under new leadership. Gregory and Ruth celebrated their 20th anniversary. Patricia retired and wrote a book about nonprofit governance that became required reading in business schools. And Brennan and I grew old together, our hair graying, our steps slowing, our love deepening with each passing year. On our 40th anniversary, we returned to the botanical gardens where we'd been married. The trees were bigger, the paths were different, but the feeling was the same. 2 people who'd chosen each other despite everything that tried to tear them apart. Do you have any regrets? Brennan asked. Only that we had to go through all that in the first place, but not about how we handled it. Me too. We sat on a bench watching young couples take wedding photos, full of hope and promise, completely unaware of the trials that might await them. What would you tell them? Brennan asked, nodding toward a bride and groom posing by a fountain. If you could give them one piece of advice? I thought about it for a long time. I'd tell them that love isn't enough. You also need honesty. You need the courage to speak hard truths even when it costs you. You need the strength to choose what's right over what's easy. That's not very romantic. No, but it's true. He took my hand, his fingers finding mine with the ease of 4 decades together. I'm glad you chose truth, even when it hurt. Me too. We sat there until sunset. 2 people who'd survived a scandal that should have destroyed them, who'd built a life on the ashes of betrayal, who'd proven that integrity was worth fighting for, even when the fight was brutal. The foundation we'd saved continued its work. Thousands of children were alive because we'd refused to let one person's crimes destroy something good. That was our legacy. Not the scandal itself, but what we built from it. And in the end, that made all the pain worth it.